You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is an author, communications trainer, and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
So Alper, last week we were talking about the 6 principles of investor presentations. And these are the 6 must-have principles, the 6 must-have criteria.
Yeah.
And I asked you, are these things that I should probably have on my slides? And you said, no, these are things that you must have on your slides. So these are 6 criteria that aren't just nice to haves, they're must haves. And so last week.
They're must haves, yeah.
Yeah. So last week we went into 1 and 2. So this week, let's go into 3 and 4. So Alper, what's criteria number 3? Tell me about that one.
Yeah. Before we do that, I want to give credit to the source of this information, my mentor here in Barcelona, Mateo Carenzo.
Okay.
And he has this series, the video series about these 6 criteria. And I highly recommend everyone interested in the topic, watch that, and we'll include the link in the show notes.
Okay.
Last week we talked about, if I remember correctly, the market and the value proposition. Well, the third one is timing.
Timing. Okay.
And when I say timing, I am talking about my own benefit as an investor, because an investment made in the wrong timing with an off timing, let's say, is one of the most common ways that investors lose money in a startup. And, in a very typical slide deck, pitch deck these days, you can see something about timing. If it may be there, it may not be there. But when it is there, it's usually like a Gantt chart or a timeline or a line in the shape of an arrow saying, well, last year we did this quarter we did this is what we're going to do, and this is what the future looks like.
Okay.
But when I mentioned timing as a criteria, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the steps of the project. I'm talking about, from the eyes of the investors, to be able to answer the question, why now?
Okay.
Why should I invest in this company now?
Okay.
So it's important, if you're a founder, if you're making a pitch to investors, it's important for you to identify why now is the right moment to do that. And what do I mean by that? For example, has your project been tried before? Have there been alternatives before? Have other people tried to do the same thing before you? And have they failed? Have they called it quits, or are they still in the market? And what worked before or what didn't work before? And how are you going to do things differently this time? And what kind of advantages knowing these things in the past give you today so that you could be successful? I mean, that's basically the way of answering the question, why should I invest now, from the eyes of the investors? And as an entrepreneur making the presentation, doing the pitch, for example, you can include in your slides information about basically telling, look, these ideas, maybe they have been tried before, but maybe the technology wasn't there. Maybe it wasn't ready. Maybe the market wasn't ready. So this is what happened in the past. This is why things didn't work out at all, or at least the way they intended to. This is what is different now. And this is why we think it's a good opportunity to invest now. Okay. This is why we think the project is more capable of, taking off now. By the way, have you watched the documentary, General Magic, about the birth of the smartphone?
No, I'm not familiar with that documentary at all.
Well, I highly recommend it. It's a beautifully produced documentary about how everything we take for granted, I mean, not everything, but most of the things that we take granted today in smartphones were actually invented many, many years ago. But from my understanding from the documentary, the timing was off.
Okay.
That's why the project didn't get up. And it's an amazing documentary. I highly recommend checking it out in terms of the market's readiness and timing of the project.
So wait, before we move on, I've got a question for you about how to represent timing on a slide. So you mentioned before some nice visual tools, Gantt charts and stuff like this. These are visual things, visual representation of timing issues. Mm-hmm. Were you mentioning those as like a good example or as a bad example?
Well, depends on what you want to show on the slide. I mean, if you want to show a timeline, not timing, a timeline of what happened in your project before, what is happening now, and what you're thinking of happening in the future, yes, of course. I mean, maybe something fancier than just a straight line with an arrow cap could be nicer, and there are ways of doing that.
Okay.
But the important thing here is to differentiate between the timeline and the timing. That's why in terms of timing, I would recommend a design more creative than just putting items on the slides from left to right in a chronological order and talking about why now is the time to invest in the project. I would recommend coming up with a different approach to that.
So
those visual things are good for showing chronological things, but here we're talking about something more critical than just here's a brief history of what happened and how we envision the future.
So if an unimaginative example would be, a line from left to right, and it says, okay, well, the company was founded on this date, and move over a little to the right, and then this happened, and then move over a little to the right, and then this happened, and move over a little to the right, and this is what we want to do, and this is where you come in, and blah, blah, blah. If that's an unimaginative, have you seen any good examples of like what's an imaginative or a good way to represent the timing issue? Why this is the right time? What's a good way to do that?
I have not seen that.
You've not seen it. So this is like this is greenfield territory here.
I'm thinking about it now.
If this is greenfield territory, if you can figure out a way to answer this question, then your potential investor is going to think no one has ever done this well. So this is a green field for you. This is completely untried territory.
Since the idea is talking about what didn't work out before, I think the theme would be around lessons learned or like experience gained. So maybe in a creative way, list maybe 3 or 4 things about what wasn't ready at the time on the left side of the chart and on the slide. And maybe on the right side, like when you start talking about why is a good time now, push them in the background, make them visible, not totally invisible, but slightly less visible, like with fade effects or transparency effects, and talk about how you're going to address each of those 2 or 3 things that you mentioned, or I said maybe 3 or 4 things that you mentioned, and what is different now. So the idea is, in the past, this was a case, this is what we're doing now. In the past, that was a case, this is what we're doing now. So basically a comparison between what was and what is now.
Okay. And I've got another question for you on this subject, and we're running out of time, so we won't be able to do 2 principles today.
I told you I could speak between 30 seconds and 30 hours.
So there'll be future episodes on the other principles, but today we're talking about timing. So, and I've got one more timing question for you. Okay. So if I'm an entrepreneur and tomorrow I'm talking to this potential investor about a $500 million investment, for example, let's say $500 million. And this is the first time that I'm talking to him. And if he gave the typical cycle time from first meeting to money in the bank is probably something like 3 months, right? I mean, the investor needs some time to think about this stuff.
Could be much
more.
Could be much more than that.
So maybe even more. So
you mean between the pitch deck and the signing of the agreement?
Yeah.
And signing of the agreement followed by money in the bank.
Yeah.
It could be much more than that.
Okay. So one of the challenges that I have, I'm an entrepreneur, and one of the challenges that I have is I need $500 million, but I don't need it today. I've got a meeting with the investor tomorrow, but I don't need the $500 million today. If you gave me $500 million today or tomorrow or this week or something, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to waste it on chairs or, other fancy office equipment. I'm not going to spend it on what I really need to spend it on. But that thing that I really need to spend it on, that thing's not going to happen for like 6 months or a year from now. Is it too early for me to talk to this potential investor about timing? Hey, I need your money, but I'm meeting with you today, but I don't actually need your money for another year. Am I wasting everybody's time by going and talking to this investor and saying, hey, I need you to say yes today, but I can't use your money today. Am I wasting everybody's time?
That's a good question. And I don't think so, because to clarify, the idea that you as an entrepreneur need to give to the investors in terms of timing, again, not the timeline, but the timing is, look, the conditions are right now to go ahead with this project. They weren't right before. And if we don't do something now, we may miss the opportunity in the future. So it's neither too late or too soon to invest. Okay. And that's why I am urging you to consider investing in this project now. Like you said, even if you're inclined to do it today, it doesn't mean you're going to ask for my bank account and send the money tomorrow. But again, the idea is to give the impression, not the impression, but is to make it visible enough that if you're interested in this project, this is the moment to act.
Okay.
Because the conditions are right. That's basically the idea. I don't know if that answers your question, but again, I'm not talking about the timeline of what is going to happen from this day forward, but again, rather the timing of why this is the right time to invest. Okay. And go ahead with this project.
Okay. So we're out of time for today. We've got 3 criteria left. And before we wrap up, remind me, this came from Matthew Carenzo. Is that correct?
Yes. This is a series of videos that we did together. And for me, this information is like gold. So I recommend anyone interested in the topic to follow the links, check them out, and enjoy the wide range of information that he's giving out.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to put those links in the show notes so that everybody can go see them. And these are YouTube videos, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's it for today. And like I say, we have 3 criteria left. You'll hear from us again on those 3 criteria in future weeks. So thanks for the input, Alper.
All right. Good talking to you, Matt.
Good talking to you. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.